Three, two, one. Fuck, wait. God damn it. God. Three, two, one. Recording. The one and only Roger Williams, author of my favorite book. If listeners right now, if at this point, that's become my shitty like tagline almost, you know? It's like kind of Rush Limbaugh had that like tone. It was like ding, don't. Like by now, when I have Roger on, you should be mouthing it to yourself. Roger Williams, author of my favorite book, Metamorphosis of Prime Intellect, which will be sticking in the top comment and in the description. If you're not, then you're not a true fan, and I don't want you in my life. But Roger
Well, no,
Williams,
we got we every once in a while we might get a new fan.
you do, you do.
So
It's time to
yeah.
turn them from fans into blind members of our cult.
Hey,
I mean,
and
political
they will
campaign.
all have a thermonuclear weapon in
They will all
2050.
have a bright future. They will all have a bright future. I'm reading this book called, or I finished it, called The Button, and it's by a former Secretary of Defense, all about nuclear posturing and how it's like, and it's a former Secretary of Defense saying that we need to like back off the nukes. That, you know, if anyone else said it, I'd be like, oh, that fucking hippie. But it's the SecDef going, hey, I've been in this game for 50 years, and I'm telling you, we're not doing it right. And I want to get him on just so I can pitch the idea of Kerrigan Williams 2028. Would you like to be our SecDef under one stipulation? I need you to do a hard 180 on your nuclear
Well,
stance.
yeah, we need someone who appreciates the danger, and
Ooh.
that was one of the things that Stanley Kubrick uh, was really leaning on in Doctor Strangelove, was that you had all these people saying all these crazy things,
Yeah.
and without seeming to understand what was going on.
Hmm.
So, but anyway, so we don't have time today really to do the reading
Mm-hmm.
for Revelation 3. Uh, but I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about the Atlanta shooter, the
Okay.
guy who shot up the massage parlors.
Yeah.
Um, because okay, and I have self-identified as a left-leaning person.
For the record, today is Sunday, March 21st, 2021, for future listeners to know about what we're talking about.
Right. Yeah. So this has been less than a week, and everyone is losing their shit over what this guy did. And you've got the people going, he targeted Asians, it's a hate crime, it's a racist thing. You've got the people going, well, he targeted women, it's misogynist, it's sexist, it's a sexist thing, it's a, okay. And I haven't heard a single voice in the media that has a fucking clue what's going on. The dude is well, I'm going to say there is a distinction between serial killers and mass murderers. This guy's a mass murderer. He went out, killed a bunch of people all at once. But in this case, there's an overlap between serial killers and mass murderers. And in this case, he is a member of an overlapping group. The Venn diagram overlaps a bit. Okay, with a particular motivation that we've seen before. It's not very mysterious. And I think one of the reasons that the Atlanta PD has been a bit cagey about it is they're a big police department. And I'm sure they have at least one expert who has gone, look, we know what makes this guy tick. We've no, we've seen guys like this before, but he doesn't fit into any of the political buckets that people are waving around. Everybody wants to make this guy their poster child, and he's not their poster child. And this is driving me friggin' nuts. It's because these are my people that I nominally agree with on most policy things and all. And it's like, this guy is not a racist. He's not a misogynist, not in any conventional sense that those words mean anything. He's deeply disturbed guy who has a serious mental problem, and we need to figure it out before 2050. So, and the thing is, if we apply the usual lenses, if you look at what he did through the lens of racism, it's not going to work. if you look at what he did through the lens of misogyny and hatred of women, it's not going to work. Any of the things that you would do to mitigate the problem are not going to work because that's not his problem. He is okay, not a serial killer. I'm gonna use serial killer, even though he's really a mass murderer, because in this case the distinction doesn't matter, and people are more used to hearing the phrase serial killer. He killed a lot of people. Now, the fact that we can talk about people who killed a lot of people, and it's a large enough group that we can start to take subgroups and learn lessons from them, says something about our society, I think.
Yeah.
Um, but there are definable subgroups, observable subgroups within this group of people who kill a lot of people. Of course, one of the big subgroups under that is men who kill a lot of women. That's a big subgroup. But within that subgroup, you've got several other subgroups. It's like a lot of people are going, well, he's an incel. He couldn't get a date. Women said no. He was frustrated about that, except he wasn't. There are people for whom that was the motivation, why they became serial killers, but not this guy. He said what his motivation was. He said two things that are very significant because other serial killers and mass murderers have said the exact same thing. He said, I'm not a racist. I don't have a problem with this. Okay. And everyone is losing their shit because most of the people he killed were Asian, but he didn't kill them because they were Asian. He said why he killed them. They were causing him sexual tension. Now, things are crazy here. This is a trip to crazy land, but you have to understand, if you are trying to understand the motivations of a guy who woke up one day and said, you know, I think I need to buy a gun, which this guy did, slept on it, and then the next day went out and killed a bunch of strangers. Expecting the explanation for that to be rational is probably not a good idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
If you're trying to get into the head, you kind of have to, yeah, you kind of have to, there's like a certain amount of suspension of like rationality you have to indulge in. You have to be like, we're not talking about what he chose for lunch.
No, it's okay. The guy was seriously disturbed. We're talking about mental illness here. And the problem, he said, was that the people he killed were causing him sexual tension. Now, this is a thing other serial killers and mass murderers have also said. So you've got this group of guys. They're not necessarily incels. Their problem isn't that women keep rebuffing them and won't give them a date and they can't get laid. That's not his problem. Actually, the people he killed were prostitutes. That's going to be controversial in itself, but massage parlors, as we generally know, are like low grade. Okay, most guys go in there looking for a happy ending.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, um, and he presumably got his too. They said he spent an hour in the first one before he went on the killing rampage.
Oh shit. So just full disclosure, I don't know anything. Like I know I saw it in the news. I've just been busy, so I don't know any of the backs. I know it's everyone screaming "Stop Asian Hate," but I don't know. Yeah, I don't know anything about him. I didn't
No.
know the day he did it. I didn't know that he made statements. I don't. So I'm learning all this through you right now.
Okay. Yeah. So well, and it's not complicated, but the thing is, everyone is losing their shit over it, and in fact, you've got a couple of groups, both of whom I would normally agree with about things that they have a beef, that their beef should be listened to and all, that are like at each other because they think this is their poster boy. It's like, get away from my poster boy. And uh,
It's yeah.
it's and
It's
he's
like
not
the
either of their poster boys. Okay, his problem is that he was having powerful feelings that he couldn't suppress and that were very disturbing to him. Now, that's not the women's problem, but he thought it was. He thought that the women were causing these feelings. This is, again, this is not blaming the women. This is what this disturbed person who ended up going on a killing rampage thought. Um, but other men have done the same thing. So this is obviously a pattern. And his problem is that, for one reason or another, he couldn't handle the fact that he was having these powerful feelings. Now, in his case, it may have been because he belonged to this religious nut, you know, very strict religious nutcase denomination that was telling him he would go to hell and that everything was all screwed because he was having impure thoughts. But there are also guys who have done this who didn't need that. It was a lack of power. If you are insecure in your ability to control your emotions and your emotions start doing these things to you that you can't control and that to you this is a loss of power. It's a loss of self-control. To some people, that in itself is terrifying. And a fraction of these people break in the direction that the only way they can stop this or have some measure of control over it is to destroy the thing that they think is causing it. Now, you got to look at this as, people are rallying in the fucking streets going, stop Asian hate. And it's like, look, lots of people hate ethnic minorities or other people who don't look like them, and they never go out and buy a gun and start shooting them. Lots of men really don't like women. They feel frustrated. They have all kinds of problems with their relationships, and they don't go shooting up the massage parlor. They don't feel the need to do this. If you think about it, that requires a powerful motivation. This guy, it's always easier to just watch TV or go online. These are people who got out of the chair, went, got a weapon. The guy bought the weapon the day before. This involves planning. Okay, he thought about this. This was not a spur of the moment thing. He was like, I'm going to do this right. I need to get a gun. And he got the gun and then he slept on it. And he got up the next day and he went out and did something that incurred great risk, that involved a lot of effort. Okay. As much as we may hate what he did, you have to admit a lot of people would not have gone through the effort, no matter how much they hated Asians or women or
I was
anybody else.
I was gonna say there's almost some like macabre like motivational aspect to this, right? It's like most
Well, there
people
is.
you hate in your living room, and this guy said, "No, today I'm gonna hustle," and he went out and he made moves. Now, granted, it would have been a lot better if he was opening a small business, but like,
Yeah.
okay, but yeah, you're right. I mean, dude, I lived in Valdosta, Georgia for 2 years. I can tell you that if every racist killed the people they didn't like, the population of Valdosta would be 0. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, it'd be mutual assured destruction.
The
That
same with much of the world.
with much of the world, and that's not by any means justifying it or defending it, but it's like,
No, but yeah, it's you have to understand this shit.
yeah,
Okay. And the thing is, this is a new phenomenon for the human race. This is something that has only really been going on since the post World War II era. And Colin Wilson documented it in A Criminal History of Mankind, which
on a side note, do I just live under a okay, nice,
okay, notice how thick this book is.
yeah,
So
fuck.
this is like the making of the atomic bomb, except it's the history of murder by a person who is a bit controversial. A lot of people have jumped on me when I have mentioned it online. because he also wrote the occult. He is a believer in the woo, some supernatural stuff, and he
Hmm.
tends to incorporate that into some of his theories. But he was also a professional true crime writer.
Okay.
And so he knew the small details of thousands of these true crime incidents because it was his job to document them. And he draws some very fascinating patterns in this book. And one of them is the guy, in the rise of sex crime, which happens after 1950.
Okay.
Before 1950, sex crime was news. If some guy walked into uh, a house of prostitution and blew away 8 people, it would have been news. It would have been on the front page of the paper. It would have been the lead story and on the network news. Now it's like, oh, another one.
Yeah, right. It's kind of like like a CSI like trope, right? A guy,
Yeah.
killed 7 hookers, right?
Put the phrase list of serial killers into the Google
Okay.
and
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah, sure. Yeah, they're all yeah, 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 yeah. I get yeah.
and yeah, I mean, and the length of the lists that you will get is just mind blowing. This is the thing, before in World War II, you had what, Jack the Ripper, you had a couple of people, and they
Yeah.
were special.
Yeah.
They were like no one had seen anything like this before. People were shocked to their core, and now it's like, oh, another one.
And yeah,
Except for
no,
this guy. This one has a
struck a nerve.
yeah, a couple of nerves.
As
Actually, I think
as they all should, but all things considered, it's like yeah, you're right. It's we this seems to and this is dark and perhaps says something about our world, but I mean normally to kind of stay in the news for more than a week, it's got to be something brutal, like a Sandy Hook killing 6-year-olds in a bathroom. Like
yeah,
true, even
shooting up
Satan,
an elementary school or
even
something. That was
Satan,
different.
yeah, even Satan changes his profile picture on Facebook. And he's like, hey, we're all in this together.
Yeah,
But
but
all
but
things
but here you've
considered,
got
eight people. Don't take this out. All things considered, an 8-person shooting spree. It's not as far as shooting sprees go. It's not really. It's Pulse nightclub 49.
yeah. Now you've got a strain of these killers who what they want is to be famous.
Mm-hmm.
They want their name to be. And then I notice that
Dylan
people are
Roof.
getting wise to that, and it's like you'll notice I'm not saying the guy's
I
name. I've
just
noticed
fuck. I just gave one of them their names. But
uh,
yeah, you're right. You're
but
right.
but also this guy gave the investigators uh pretty much a confession. He said, oh, okay, yeah, they were causing me sexual tension, and I'm not a racist. And the whole thing about the way that he said, well, I'm not a racist, was like, why would anyone think I was a racist just because I killed a bunch of Asian people? It's like, but he didn't kill a bunch of Asian people because they were Asians and he hated Asians. He killed Asian people because the particular prostitutes that had been servicing him were Asian,
It's
and
kind of
they were the people who were causing him sexual tension.
it's kind of
Or
fucked
he
up, but
thought.
it's kind of fucked up. But it's the exact opposite of Asian hate. He killed these people
Yes,
because of
he liked
sexual
them too
tension.
much.
He
They were
had he had Asian fetish.
Yes, that was as I put it in one of the few comments I dared to leave on this. Is the two possibilities are either that he fetishizes Asian women, which is not an uncommon thing among guys
Among
who look
white
like
guys.
us.
Like,
Yeah.
look like yeah.
Or they just happen to be the available
Mm,
people who he was using to service his needs, because
proximity.
yeah. So it wasn't that they were Asian; it's that they were the shops. It's like he went to one of them, got a happy ending, started doing that regularly, but it was disturbing him because he has this impulse telling him it's bad. It's uh it's in the case of some guys, it's known that in the case of some guys, they didn't need the religious thing. And you'll see
Mhm,
people harping on the religious thing on my
mhm,
side of the political spectrum. And that's not that either,
mm.
because there are some guys who don't need the religious thing. What it is a loss of control. Because if you think about it, an orgasm is a seizure.
It's momentary nirvana.
Yeah, but it's also a
Yeah.
loss of control.
Yeah. It's
It's
yeah,
a
really.
surrender. And it can be if you're insecure
Mhm.
about your sense of self-control, it can be terrifying.
Mhm.
And I think that that is a motivation for some of these people. And nobody is getting any of this.
Mhm.
Everyone is off on their hobby horse. Oh, it's about he hates Asians. It's a hate crime. He hates women. It's a hate crime. No, that's not the fuck what it is. It's about he's an insecure person whose feelings overwhelmed him and he didn't know how to handle them. And he didn't know how to handle them in a way that has happened before and will happen again in other guys. And no one saw it coming because he hid it.
Mhm.
So the question is, how do we figure out this guy before we give him a hydrogen bomb in 2050?
Which he'll be getting.
Yeah. Well,
That's
will he? But he might not because are we giving him to felons?
yeah.
That's oh okay. That's
Hey, we're curing every well, what about felons? Well, it looks like we got to build some rehab centers. Roger,
okay.
this is a
Just
just like a nuclear bomb fully erases the battlefield. There's no holds barred.
okay. Double checking on that.
Just hey,
And
you
so
know,
it's your ticket, man. What you
don't
said?
throw this on me. You're in this with me, all right? You're the Himmler to my Hitler. That's a great soundbite one day. So Roger
oh,
Williams, your book, greatest selling book of 2024. Do you mind explaining this? I don't know him. You've appeared on his show 40 times.
yeah. Oh, that guy. Yeah.
We
I
were
ran
just
for
joking
him.
around. You were
Ran
doing
with
an
him for
episode about the
president.
Atlanta
Yeah.
shooter.
But
Yeah, yeah.
so anyway, um so the thing, but everyone is missing this, and it's not like it's a complicated thing. And I suspect what is going on with the Atlanta PD, because they're a large police department, I
Hmm.
suspect they have at least one expert who actually does understand what's going on, and he's telling them, no, this is not a hate crime, this is a bog standard serial kill. Now, the fact that I can say a thing like that says something about the human race this century, but it is a thing that keeps happening over and over again. We may not understand why it happens, but it's not a hate crime. It's not that the guy is going to buy it. It's not that the guy would have worn a KKK robe. It's not that the guy hates women. If anything, it's that he actually liked these women too much and couldn't handle his own feelings. So that is an important distinction, because if you think about it, if you define this as a hate crime, then you would take, what measures are you going to take? Are you going to do a cultural campaign to humanize the
Yeah,
victims and say,
yeah.
okay, Asian people are people too, and they're human and they have needs and they have lives of their own, and blah, blah, blah? Or are you going to shame the people who say bad things, and who voice these things and use the N word or whatever the equivalent is for Asians? Okay. None of that would have any effect on this guy.
Yeah. I mean, and perhaps I live under a rock, but I feel like the only genuine Asian hate I know of is from Harvard University. Truly, the fact that they have higher standards for Asians to be accepted. That's systemic Asian hate. I mean, like
Yeah.
there's no punchline there. That's what that is.
Yeah, and
It's
that's the weird thing about seeing people marching in the streets over
it's
this, is that
inverse affirmative action. That's been known since
yeah,
2015 that you have to have a higher SAT and a higher GPA to be Asian and get in.
yeah. And so it's like, yeah, how are we being hurt as white males by this?
Yeah. Who knows?
So
Maybe that guy took a page out of Harvard's book. Maybe he said, "You're right." You know, I see Harvard, this respectable institution, making it more difficult for Asians. That means Asians are invading. I'm going to do my part. I mean, where's the
yeah,
blame laying on
well, and
Harvard? But I say all
there,
this exaggerating because what I'm saying right now is complete horseshit, and I'm trying to illuminate that it's all.
yeah, uh, and the thing is, there, yes, there have been periods, and there are places where uh, the yellow menace, you know, has been an issue, and now I don't think it's as much lately in our age, but obviously people feel it. I mean, the and that's not to say that it's not a problem or that it hasn't been a problem or that it something doesn't need to be done about it. But this guy that everyone is going on about is not your poster child for that.
Mhm.
He is something completely different. This guy is also not your poster child for misogyny or hatred of women because he yeah, if any, you know, it's not that he was an incel and he couldn't get a date and they were denying him. I mean, the people he killed were basically prostitutes who were basically saying probably said yes without any problem and did their function and gave him the happy ending, you know,
Mhm.
as their job provided.
Mhm.
And that's the thing that caused his psychological problem to erupt. Uh, Not that they were denying him in any way, but that they were giving something that part of him wanted and part of him hated.
Mhm.
And yes, that's insane. It's a massive psychological problem. We need to understand these things. So,
Well,
you know,
it's like
because you can't do anything about them
well,
if
it's
you.
I was gonna say it's like Jeffrey Dahmer. If you ever watched this interview with him,
Mhm.
him and his dad, you know, God bless his parents, they still went and visited him in prison. You know, it's they still came in, "This is my son," for whatever, you know, no comment on that, but I mean, hey, I guess parents love. But then when, the interviewer asked and Dahmer's like, you know, he's in, like, handcuffs and there's guards there. But when the interviewer asked him about, like, you know, "You had early homosexual thoughts?" And he was like, "Oh, absolutely," and he was going on about this, like, self-discovery that he liked men, and he's like, "But I knew my dad wouldn't accept it," and the interviewer asked his dad, and his dad's like, "Well, it's, you know, it's objectively wrong, like, you know, that's not how God intended us to be," but you see this dark comedy and that his dad is willing to put past his son's serial killing past and still love his son, still thinks he should be in jail, but still love his son as his son, but then the second something as trivial as
Can't handle the
sexual,
fact that he might have been gay.
you see that and you're like, "Man,
Now we know
there's
how
some."
bad the guy got fucked up.
That's what I mean, is now it's you're like, "Oh, there's some." It's like Tim Dillon said, he's like, "I remember when I told my dad I was gay." He was like 25. And he goes, and my dad looked at me and said, "There was $100 bills on the mantle for the house cleaner. It's not here anymore. Do you know anything about that? Tim, did you take the $100?" Says dad just completely just pushed. He's like, I finally got up the balls to say it. He's like, I'm crying, and I tell my dad I'm gay. He's like, and my dad just ignores it, and it's like, man, that's yeah, it's gotta fuck you up. Now I don't know if that's a blank check to go murder people and then say, "Woe was me."
Well, duh, but the thing is that we have to understand this is a thing that does happen to some people.
Mhm.
And I think I made the point to you before that sometimes uh, the best opportunity to learn how something works is to observe it when it's broken.
Mhm.
You know, because if you just look at cars moving back and forth on the highway all day long, then how do they move? What's propelling them?
Yeah.
You might not have any idea. But if you see one sitting by the side of the road belching steam, then you know heat is involved.
Yeah.
You can learn something from that.
Or a
If
plane
you go
without a
to
wing.
yeah, I mean, assuming you don't have the ability to just like take a car apart, but then if you go to a junkyard and you can find one that's thrown a rod and you can see into the engine, you might get an idea how this mechanism is assembled. And you don't get much more broken than being a mass murderer. That's
Mhm.
you know, but that illustrates starkly how our emotional system can malfunction, but also how it functions when it's functioning normally. If you back off from that malfunction and say, "It's like, look, people have serious issues with these feelings." You know, biology doesn't always prepare you for the things it's going to do to you.
Mhm.
And some people are just freaked out by it. And
Mhm.
especially if you pile onto that, like the religious education, or maybe you're picked on, or maybe you really do have a problem appealing to the opposite sex or to the same sex if that's your thing, or you have some other thing, and you have this constellation of influences, some of which are pushing on you and some of which aren't, and every once in a while you have a perfect storm, and the influences push in just the right combination that somebody snaps
Mm-hmm.
and they can't handle it. They
Mm-hmm.
they come to a conclusion that is completely bonkers.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you look at this guy, like I said, he went out the day before, bought the gun. So he's sitting there that evening with a gun in front of him, thinking, all right, I'm going to do this thing. Now, logically, this does not make any sense, because if his idea is that women are causing these feelings that he can't control, he can't exactly kill all of the women in the world.
Mm-hmm.
But what he is doing is establishing a sense of power
Mm-hmm.
over this thing he can't control. Now, again, that is bonkers. It is not to say I'm blaming the women in any way. Uh, Even he might say, "Well, I'm not blaming the women." You know, some of these guys would say that. Some would have enough self knowledge to go, "Oh no, this was me." You know, I had to kill her to prove to myself that I was in control of the situation. And this is a thing that happens a lot. The A lot of these guys, and it is, and one of the funny things, it is almost all guys. That is itself a topic. But when you get to where the rubber hits the road, it's about power, and that they don't think they have it and they need to acquire it. And they can't think of any other way except to kill, because there's nothing that says I have power over you like the fact that I just cut your throat
Mm-hmm.
or strangled you or
Mm-hmm.
put a bullet in your head.
Mm-hmm.
That's uh, so that is unequivocal. It's like once you do that, you can actually feel like you are in control of the situation for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Now you see this a lot more in serial killers. The thing about mass murderers tend to be disorganized. That's, they're doing, even this guy. It was, even though he thought about it overnight, he slept on it before he went and did it. It was still not. He wasn't making any attempt to cover his tracks. He knew this was probably going to be the last meaningful thing he ever did in the real world. But he had to. He felt he had to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So uh, now serial killers can be a lot more dangerous because they are covering their tracks, and they're thinking about being able to do it again. It's like they're going to get their hit and they're going to feel better for a while. But then after a few weeks or whatever, nah, got to find another one.
Yeah.
Got to do it again. Um, and one of the things, of course, Colin Wilson wrote that book that I showed you in the early 80s. Uh, so a lot has happened since then.
Well, really, school shootings. I mean, right?
Yeah, there were,
Columbine was
yeah,
99.
yeah, he didn't even have school shootings
That's what I
in
mean.
A Criminal History of Mankind. That was like yet a new development. Uh, but he did mention Richard Speck, the uh, and that one of the weird things that happened there was that he committed like 2,000 rapes, and a lot of those ended up as murders. And
Jesus.
you got to think about the amount of effort that involves. This is a highly motivated person. Okay, you're going to tell somebody, I'm going to do a motivational thing. It's like, get off your ass, go out in the world,
You go
do
get
something.
it.
Okay, I'm going to kill 1,000 women. That's not what
It's
I
like,
meant. Uh,
sorry, Sam Hyde. Sam Hyde, the comedian, who's like, there are lessons in terrible things. I mean, 9/11, 19 guys, a couple box cutters, barely
mhm.
spoke a lick of English. and they put their heads together and they believe in themselves.
Yeah. Well, it's look at the trouble Bill Maher got into for just saying, look, they're not cowards. You can say a lot of bad things about them. They were assholes and all, but you can't say that someone who did that is a coward.
Hey, yeah, I mean, Stalin really, he probably could teach some lessons in confidence. I bet Stalin knew how to go ask a girl on a date without, his voice cracking.
Yeah.
You know,
So
take what you
yeah,
will.
yeah. So you've got there is a thing going on here, and it is a thing that is very distinct from conventional racism. It's very distinct from conventional misogyny or sexism. And it's a very specific thing. It has several different ways of manifesting that can be understood, that they pretty much are. And this guy is one of them. And you've got everybody losing their shit over it because they're wanting to make him their poster boy for their thing that is not at all related to what he actually did.
Mhm,
And at the back of it, there is an actual thing that is happening here that needs to be understood because it keeps happening over and over and over again since the 1950s. Now, what is it about the post war society that makes these guys go off? That, like, this is uh, Wilson makes a strong case that it's the Maslow hierarchy, that before this era, these guys simply wouldn't have had an
you don't
opportunity.
have
They
the
would have been
time.
too, yeah, they would have been too busy staying alive,
Great
taking care of the
Depression,
business of
Dust
life.
Bowl, yeah,
Yeah. But after World War II, you have this whole middle class arise, and you've got people who
idle time.
have, yeah, they have time to breathe. They don't have to worry about survival issues, and that gives them room to look more toward the ego
Mm,
and self-actualization. And this is one of the things he says, is that a lot of these crimes are crimes of self-actualization. they're they're not to provide for a need for food. They're not to provide for a need for shelter. They're not to provide for a need for domestic stability, which is a thing. They're to provide for an ego
mhm,
that doesn't feel secure. And if you're worried about those other things, then, you know, that's why it's the Maslow hierarchy. You
mhm,
haven't gotten to the top of it yet. But now we've got a lot of people who've gotten to the top of it, and they're uh kind of casting about, and then when one of these impulses strikes them, they don't have anything else to do, so they can follow it.
mhm,
uh you know if it was 100 years ago and they were dirt scrabble farmers, even with the same religious upbringing, the same asshole parents, this guy probably would have been a little too busy bringing the crops in and doing the chores to go find the prostitutes and then get the idea to start killing them because they were bothering him so much.
mhm.
That's
It's a
the
modern it's a
modern
modern
twist on it.
it's a yeah, it's a t it's a bold way to say it, but it's a it's a luxury problem to have
Yes,
when you can
exactly.
decide which sex worker you feel frustrated with instead of like, I have to kill a deer and I have to get this firewood back to the hut. You don't have time, right?
Yeah. You know, uh, so and again, that's a thing a lot of people don't want to face directly. That the one thing about modern society that is actually good, that people aren't confronted with these
Mhm.
threats that used to be universal, and that turns them into the threat for the next person over
Yeah,
because they have all this, they have this idle time and capability to go, well, I don't feel fulfilled.
yeah,
Maybe if I kill this guy, then I'll
yeah.
feel real.
Well, I was gonna say, I was just thinking as I was well, one, I was gonna say I graduated UGA in December 2013, and I took like 2 years off. It was right after I decided I wanna go to medical school, and, like, a couple weeks later, lost my brother to suicide, and I had a couple years off where I kinda just took time off from everything. And that was the most miserable 2 years of my life because I had all the time in the world to just smoke weed, go do whatever, go meditate by a river. I mean, shit, it was fun for like a month, and then it turned into hell. And I kept thinking, I was like, "Well, I don't wanna go back to doing work." I was miserable trying to get into medical school. Since I started this podcast in December 2019, it's the happiest I've been because I'm busy every day. But I say all of that to say, yeah, what's the balance? You know, you could say, well, now that you're not worried about slaughtering a cow or going to get clean drinking water from the well and keeping the hut from freezing and your kin from dying, you know, when you do that, you don't have time to think about killing hookers or, shooting up a school. So you could argue that being busy and struggling all the time is actually good, but then you have to think, well, what's the greater good? When everyone's struggling, not everyone slaughters the cow. Not everyone does get the clean water. Untold numbers die. So then you got to balance. What's worse? Everyone's struggling, but not having internal struggles about killing Asian hookers, but 10% of the population dies because of famine, or is it better to have 99.999% of the population survive, and then there are these horrific things where 8 people dead, sure, but in a country of 346 million?
Yeah.
I
I
don't
mean,
know. I don't know. I
the
can't answer that.
the list of serial killers is kind of horrific.
But even add
The
all those up, and they're not a drop in the bucket compared to one bad farming season in 1750.
or the number of people who get killed in auto accidents
Ex-
every
ex-
year.
exactly. But even, do you get what I'm saying though? It's like they're
Hmm.
horrific, but I mean, you know,
But we all, but the thing is, because of the way that it happens,
yeah.
and most people don't really parse it. It's like, okay, I have been shot at. I am the victim of a drive-by shooting. Fortunately,
You are?
the yes. Did
Damn it, Roger. What the
I
hell
never told you that?
No,
Oh, I've had a very interesting life.
I had a feeling you were in the Bloods or the Crips. I knew it.
No, when I lived in Kenner, Louisiana in the late 80s and early 90s, we lived in a very bad neighborhood, uh, which was mostly black. We were the funky white couple, and we kept a very low profile. I always felt fairly safe there because no one knew that we had anything. In fact, it was funny because some of my coworkers lived on the other side of the interstate in the better neighborhood, and they were like, "How can you live in that shithole on 27th Street behind the airport?" And I was like, "Dude, if one of my neighbors wants to jack a TV set to pay for his drugs, he's not going to break into my house because he doesn't think I have anything. He's going to walk across the interstate and break into your house because he can walk there from my house." And
I
in
mean,
fact, that
yeah.
happened a couple of times. But we had an incident. The guy who ran everything in at the time, I knew a few people who told me that Kenner, Louisiana was the most corrupt small town of its size in the entire United States. And the difference between Kenner and New Orleans being 10 times the size of Kenner, is that Kenner's corrupt cops were competent. New Orleans's corrupt cops kept getting caught and fucking up. Well, the guy who ran everything in Kenner at the time was Sal Lentini. Notice the Italian thing. There's a connection there. Okay. Yes, this is all mobbed up.
Mhm.
And he started to get old and started to get paranoid. And he started to uh, take out the people he thought were threatening him, who had been his allies. And his number two guy was named Nick Congemi. And Nick saw this coming up. Uh, so Nick kept a sharp eye on everything. And one day, Nick watched out the window of his office as a uniformed Kenner police officer put a package in the trunk of Congemi's car. So Nick saw this happen. He went directly out, went in the trunk of his car, got the package, went into Sal's office, dropped the key of cocaine on Sal's desk, and said, "One of your men left this in my car by mistake." And then went directly from there to the registrar of voters to register to run against his boss for the next sheriff's election, which he won on a law and order platform. We're going to clean up all of the stuff that is wrong in Kenner, all of the corruption. We're going to deal with that. Now, this is the number 2 guy. Okay. Needless to say, cleaning up the corruption is not what happened.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
anyway, the day after Kangemi took office, now at the time, you got to realize we knew for a solid fact that the Kenner police were running the cocaine trade and the stolen car ring. We knew about the drug trade because the previous tenant in our rental house had been a drug dealer. And for the first couple of months we lived there, we were getting knocks on the door from people trying to buy drugs. And we would have to tell her, "Oh, no, June moved over on the other side of the airport. You can find her there." Um, and we knew some other people whose car had been stolen, and they had to trace it to the Kenner PD to
Mhm.
basically stay out of jail because they pissed off the wrong people. So anyway, we're like keeping the low profile of the, mousy class. Just, we're the funky white couple on 27th Street. Everybody knew us. I felt perfectly safe driving, not even driving, walking to the convenience store 3 blocks away at 3 a.m. No problem. Everyone knew who I was. Then all of a sudden, everyone got a gun. It was like mushrooms fucking sprouting. No one knew where they stood anymore. No one knew whether they were paid off. It
Mhm.
it literally started a war. I told people that before Lentini got deposed, we didn't have law, but we had order. Afterward, we didn't have order. we, no one knew where they stood. Uh, and so a couple of days after the change of the sheriff, there's that convenience store. Like I said, I felt safe walking to the convenience store 3 blocks away in the middle of the morning. It's not a problem. Well, the manager called the sheriff's department and said, "I understand you're in there with a very new broom. We have a vacant lot across the street from us, and there's a bunch of black guys that sit over there all day long drinking beer and throwing their empties into the grass. And we understand you can do something about this." So they did something about this, right?
Mhm.
They went, rousted the guys that were sitting over, drinking beer across the street from the time saver. And so they went to the next nearest vacant lot, which was around the corner from me and across the street from one of my neighbors who I had become friends with. We had been living there for about 4 years at the time. And Wes was he was a very nice guy, but calling him stupid would be generous. He lived in that neighborhood the whole time, had no idea. It's like I would tell him, it was like, "You realize that the house across from us is the crack house now." And he's like, "Drugs? There are drugs in our neighborhood?" It's like, "Well, you can kind of tell by the police car that pulls up every Thursday afternoon and the little boy comes out with a paper bag to give them their payoff."
Jesus.
Yeah, but it's like they weren't even trying to fucking hide it. They were that confident. And so anyway, so when he woke up this morning, and the black guys who were normally across from the time saver were across the street from his house instead. And a normal person would have just called the police himself and said, "There's a bunch of vagrants across the street from my house." He had a 5-year-old girl. I mean, this guy was like Flanders from The Simpsons.
Mhm. Yeah, diddly
Uh,
doodly.
yeah. Um, so, but instead of doing that, he marched over himself and told them that they would need to move it along or he would do something about it. that ended up with everybody coming back with guns, and he ended up moving out in a hurry. Um, so that was in November of 1990. Well, so we knew where Wes had moved. We went and visited him once in a while because he, so like we had this situation. He was around the corner, but our backyards abutted, so we had spent a lot of time talking. He was very devout fundamentalist Christian, uh, and but kind of as I do with you, it's like we sort of met in the middle and
Mhm.
had a civil discourse about the things that we had differences over. I
Mhm.
liked him; he was a nice guy. Um, but one night, it was actually December 23rd, day before Christmas Eve. He showed up about dinner time, and we're like, "Hey, Wes, what's up?" It's like, "Oh yeah, I just thought I would swing by and say Merry Christmas and see how things are going." So we settled in. We had some catching up to do, so that was fine, And it was getting later and later and later, and he wouldn't fucking leave. um, and I was sitting there, it's like drinking shots of Jack Daniels, and I was getting more than a little wasted,
Little lit up.
and little, I was lighting the room up.
Okay.
And Wes wasn't. Wes, and he made a point of showing us that he brought his gun. It's like, it's like I'm ready if anything happens. It's like, what the fuck's gonna happen? It's like, well, I don't know, but if it does, I'm ready for it, right?
Man,
So
he's just overstaying his welcome with a gun.
yes,
Yeah,
in my living room.
I think I'd be getting fucked up too.
So about 11 o'clock, my uh, wife, at that point, we hadn't been married yet, so it's like we'd been living together for a long time. So
Mhm.
Elaine and I have lived together for much longer than we've been married.
Mhm.
She was just got tired and said, "Look, I'm going in the back." Well, apparently, this is what the assholes were waiting for, was for the woman to not be in the room, because I guess you know, drive-by shooting a woman is just not as cool, right?
There's a
And
code.
so yeah, so I'm sitting here with my drink in my hand like this, and Wes is on the other side of the room, and Elaine goes in the back, and like just a few moments after that, I hear pop, 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 and the last is, I'm thinking that sounds an awful lot like fireworks, and with the last one though, I felt a breeze,
Oh,
and when I looked up, Wes had somehow gotten out of my couch into the kitchen, gotten my wall mounted telephone out of its cradle, and had dialed 911 while I'm
adrenaline.
sitting here with my drink going, what the fuck just happened? Well, and then, they only hit the house once, but there was a hole in the window, and there's a hole in my media cabinet, which I still have incidentally. So I have a souvenir of this little incident in my life. It's a cedar cabinet that I repurposed into a TV and audio cabinet.
There's a weird glitch in the simulation because this morning I had on Joe Tedeye and he was talking about a couple times when he was shot at and he was hit one time. We talked about another time how there was a shot that went through the Humvee they were in and it skinned the he had a magazine on his vest and it clipped the magazine and he goes and I still have the magazine. Now you're telling me about
Yes, I have a bullet hole too.
but twice in the same day, back to back episodes. I mean, do we need to reset the
We
router?
live we live in we live in the United States in the 21st century. It's
But I
bullets
mean,
all the way down.
just the universe simulation is just it's supposed to drop these Easter eggs every 200 episodes, and it drops two back to back, just
Yeah,
glitching.
somebody got to talk to the programmer. He's just like, fuck that up, man.
I swear to God,
So
I'm having on a
so
guy after
anyway,
this. I swear to God, if it happens for a third time, I'm gonna go buy a lottery ticket or I'm gonna go shoot up an Asian massage parlor.
lottery ticket, definitely. Okay.
Well, it depends on how I'm feeling.
So anyway, if you drew a line between the hole in the window and the hole in my media cabinet, it passed like about this.
Just like with Ted Eye. Yep, that the universe is
Yeah.
glitching.
So that was December 23rd. On Christmas Eve, we were in Mandeville looking at real estate.
Yeah.
Yeah, people wonder, it's like, what the fuck happened? Well, that was the thing. So looping way the hell back is that I'm not like unfamiliar with living in sketchy settings and stuff. I was comfortable with that for many years.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but you do have to understand what you're dealing with. And uh, the thing that happened in 1990 was the thing that I was dealing with changed. And it took getting shot at for me to realize, oh, wait, this is not the sketchy neighborhood that I thought I was living in. This is a different sketchy neighborhood where you can just get randomly shot because everybody has a fucking gun now. Because before that, nobody had guns. It was,
Mm-hmm.
there was a crack dealer every 3 blocks. They were generally single mothers who, they would have a small area, they would have a small amount of product, and so it wasn't worth like mounting an armed invasion
Yeah.
to take them over. Well, after Kangemi took over, uh, their innovation was centralized distribution, where you would have fewer houses that would have more product and have larger areas. But that meant you also needed to have uh, armed guards to protect it. And the whole thing changed the tenor. Of course, all of the people who thought they had been paid off, that thought they were protected under the Lentini regime, suddenly weren't anymore or didn't know
Mm-hmm.
if they were. And so the murder rate quintupled. We knew a couple of EMTs at the time, and they told us that starting at that point, they refused to go into the city of Kenner uh, until they would pull over on the side of the road and put their bulletproof vests on
Jesus.
before they would enter the city of Kenner. And
Jesus.
uh,
Combat medics.
yeah, that was the way that they looked at it. In fact, one of them actually was a military veteran that was, he was an EMT first responder at the time, and we would have drinks with them once in a while. And they were like, "Oh no, man, Kenner is like the most corrupt, the most dangerous small town in the country right now." And it's just like, it's just this little dipshit place that's one municipality over from from New Orleans, in the greater New Orleans area. But like everyone said, their corrupt cops are competent.
Mm-hmm.
They know what they're doing, and
Mm-hmm.
you don't want to fuck with them. So
Roger.
the
Roger, tell him where to get your book. I gotta pee.
all right, yeah. I wrote the Metamorphosis of Prime Intellect, which is considered one of the big technological singularity books of all time. If you would like a copy of it on paper, please consider getting it from lulu.com directly instead of through Amazon. You can find it on Amazon easily enough. The price will be the same because of the contracts everybody signs. But if you buy it from Lulu, they are the direct publisher of record, and they give me the cut of the cover price that would normally go to Amazon and the rest of the network. So uh, I've been reminding people to do that for a few months here, and it worked out really good last month. So, um, and if you look it up, you can read it for free online. And I don't mind if you go to local Roger, LOCALROGER.com. The entire text is there. There are also links. You can get it as an ebook for your Kindle or for your generic EPUB format. There are plenty of options. And if you just Google it, you'll find a few reviews of it out there. Uh, it's a thing people have found interesting. So I think Tommy's back.
got my jacket. I'm cold as fuck. By the way, do you like
And
this?
incident, I ordered it. I ordered the Area 51 shirt.
I know. I saw that, and I'm excited for that. I'm thankful for
And
that.
yeah, and once I see that the fit and quality are what I'm expecting, there's a couple of others I got
Yeah,
on my eyeballs too.
and
Uh,
I'm gonna need feedback on that because there's like different types of shirts, there's different materials and shit. So you're gonna guinea pig this for me, and
sure.
yeah, but yeah.
Yeah, I was hoping to wear it on the show, but it hadn't come yet. I don't think they've made it yet. I haven't gotten the
There's a
notice that it
weird,
shipped.
yeah, there's a weird thing where some of them take like twice as long to make. I just get updates on like the process of like the Snoop Loops one I made, which is I thought would be the easiest one because it's mostly a blank canvas. That one took them like 3 weeks to make, but then like a full body print like this, it was out of the from the time I ordered it to the time it was in the mail, it was like 2 days. So I have no idea.
It probably depends on the overhead and other orders and stuff like that. That's out of control. So
I
yeah,
was about to look it up and then I realized that's not interesting podcast content, so I'm not going to look it up. Well, here's how long it takes to fulfill a shirt. But yeah, Kenner, New Orleans, competent cops move out.
yeah, and I got shot at.
Yeah, and you
So
got
it's
fucking
like
shot at.
add that to the list of life experiences that Roger has had. That yeah, um, but and it does. I mean, and the whole thing is like I didn't even realize what was happening at the time. I was literally sitting there with my drink, going like, "What?"
Maybe it
And
saved you.
when Wes was like, just like, yeah, and of course he's sitting there with his gun, like this is gun, and it was all over before he could even like react.
Well,
You know, his
my
gun didn't do shit for him.
and I was with my girlfriend at the time in like early 2015 in Athens, Georgia. Someone broke into our house while I was there with her. We were falling asleep in her room and kind of dozing off, and I realized like a light came on in the kitchen, and there's just this like brief moment where it was like she was next to me and I'm in here. It's like 1 in the morning. There's like this moment where it all kind of froze, and then it was like
Mhm.
that's not good,
Yeah,
and then like I don't remember anything for like 30 seconds, and it was just an adrenaline dump. But she said I jumped out of the bed, like ran in there, like just screaming at the top, just like stretch, like a moron, just like trying to turn into like Shrek. I was just and like he ran out
the
the back and
berserker.
he jumped off the porch. It was like an 8-foot drop. He jumped off. I didn't realize this. I followed him, and he had stolen someone else's bike that night, and he was like riding around on bikes, going from like house to house, breaking shit. And I took his bike and I threw it into the river. And like I came to like 30 feet from our house, and I was like, how did I get here? Is this weird? The point is we called the cops. The cops were, you could see the police department up the hill. That was like the one place in Athens where like it was actually never cool because it was like, fuck, if we have a party that's too big, like the cops can literally see our house. But that was the one time where it was like actually cool because we called 911.
They're here in 2 seconds.
I mean, truly, I think it was like under 2 minutes. They just got in a squad car and just rolled down the hill. But even that 2 minutes was an infinity because the whole thing happened just like,
Yeah,
and it was just, it's just crazy. Yeah.
yeah, well, and it's the thing is that you don't live in expectation that violence is going to happen to you,
Mm-hmm.
and when it does, we don't know how we're going to react.
I remember when I moved to Athens, when I transferred there from Valdosta, I knew because Athens was like the poorest county in Georgia. I bought a pistol and I had it my entire time at UGA because I was like, I'm just like, I'm studying all day. I'm trying to get into med school. And in my mind, it was more of like if I don't get into med school, it's going to be because I failed, not because someone shot me. I was just like, I will not fail. So on top of studying for OChem and doing research, I also kept a fucking pistol under my bed. But I sold it. I sold it after I lost my brother to suicide, because I was pretty depressed myself, and I was like, I don't need a gun right here. I don't need a,
Yeah.
I don't need to fall
Well, it's
into a
also
hole.
a serious risk factor for should you have your own suicidal ideation.
Well, that's what I mean. Is I was like, I don't need this by here, because when I get depressed, it sucks. But I always wake up the next morning. Maybe it's a couple days of depression, but the sun always comes up again. You
Mhm.
don't need to make a bad choice when you're down in the hole, and then you never get, it's kind of a cheesy quote, but I mean, suicide's a permanent solution to a temporary problem. Point is I sold it, and then of course, like fucking 2 months later, 4 years of living there, nothing happened. 2 months later, someone breaks in. But yeah, I mean, who knows? Maybe it'd be better. I mean, my luck, I would have shot him in the back running, and there would be some public defense attorney, and I'd go to jail.
Yeah. Then you would be the news item of the day.
Yeah, white man, white man shoots black intruder. I'd be like, well, hold on, hold the fuck on. But I guess he won because he came back like 2 months later when we weren't there and took her TV.
Shit.
Yeah, yeah. So whatever,
Yeah.
whatever. Joke's on him. I'm ushering in thermonuclear war in 2050, so I'll get him back. It's you know, but yeah, it's a now. Do I just live under like a rock? Because I've been seeing this a lot on the news. I mean, really, at least it's come into my sphere of consciousness. It's become a thing that I've only so it's like AirDrop on like, Apple products. You can kind of send shit by Bluetooth. I didn't know that existed until like 2 years ago, but it's been a thing for
Mhm.
like 15 years. So I say that to say, just because I didn't know it existed doesn't mean it didn't exist. I've been seeing a lot in my public or not public, my sphere of consciousness, my social media intake, my internet perusing in what feels like the last 5 or 6 weeks. I've been seeing a lot of stop Asian hate. Is this like a airdrop thing where has this been a legitimate problem for a while, or am I just a white male with white privilege and I don't know about it, or is it truly just is this another like news item like, hey, keep all the middle class divided while the rich run away with the money?
Well, I mean, it's obviously blown the fuck all out of any proportion since
Let's
the
say
shootings in Atlanta.
let's say prior Atlanta shooting,
Yeah.
has there been a thing like Asian
I
hatred?
not that I had noticed as being a big thing. I mean, uh, like you said, there uh, were the things at universities and some of the
Well, that's
merit
instant.
programs.
Well, that's institutional. That's not
But
even.
yeah,
That's not
but
even the evil white man. That's institutional shit.
yeah, I mean, I haven't been aware of it now. And the thing is, in New Orleans, we have a huge Vietnamese community, uh, which is like probably the first or second largest in the country for a single city. And I haven't noticed or heard about anything like that. I mean, a lot of them are our customers, and we deal with the
If yeah, it just kind of
them.
feels like it's pop. And again, I don't. I've been seeing more and more posts like this is Asian hate, like just samples, and then it's been like this
I
shooting is Asian hate, and then you
I
see
was very surprised that the shooting thing blew up the way that it did in that direction because there was, as far as I can see, there was no precedent for it.
well,
That
I was
didn't
gonna
make any
a
sense.
lot of people kind of their response is, in Virginia Tech, that guy Lee, fuck it, we're not gonna say his name, killed 33 people. Remember, and
Yeah.
this was like 2009 or 10,
Hmm.
and like 28 of them were white, and
Yeah.
people are like, this wasn't white hatred then, and yeah, I think that's a good example. But then I try to step back one step further, and I'm like, so I saw like a post this morning. It's like this is unprecedented Asian hate, and I was about to be like, in 2010 there was, and then I realized as I was sitting there on the toilet on my phone on a Facebook app, I was like, just like the words popped into my head, "Don't engage," and I was like, what do I give a shit about? I'm not trying to defend this shooter in Atlanta. I don't give a fuck that he and I are white, and it's hey, don't my fellow white man like.
Yeah.
But the point is
Well, this is why I haven't made any posts on the liberal boards where I tend to haunt, because I can just see that I'm going to get taken apart
Well,
if I do, and there people are not being rational about it. It
and
it
and
doesn't make
that's the thing is like
any real
you know,
sense.
it's like you can't if you come out and say there is no Asian hate, there's an instant target
Well,
on
it's
you.
not. Yeah, it's not that there is none. It's just that this isn't an example of it.
But I'm excluding even the shooting because this is no
Yeah.
that because now we're really backing ourselves into a corner. It's like I know he shot all these Asian women, but hear me out. It's and I agree with
Yeah.
your argument that you've made this whole episode, but let's just say excluding that, even prior to that, I keep seeing that stop Asian hate crimes, and like it just, but it's like goddamn, if you're gonna step out on a limb and be like, "There's no Asian hate," because one, what do I have to gain from it, and what do I give a shit? I don't. I'm trying to sling merch on a podcast. Like this isn't I have my own game I'm playing, right? Slinging merch and getting
Hmm.
thermonuclear weapons with you, but you can't really step out because just like if you say all lives matter, there's nothing to gain from that, and there's everything to lose. It's like, well, you're a
Yeah.
fucking racist, so it's like but I'm really just trying to like objectively kind of remove myself from the system.
Yeah.
I'm a spectator in the stadium and I'm watching and I'm like, I'm for
My
my own.
feeling there is that it's probably a problem in certain localized areas,
Sure.
um, but I don't think it's really a big problem in New Orleans, for example.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't think it's a big problem. I mean, but you have probably a generalized dislike of people who are different,
Mhm.
period, that pervades the landscape. But as far as like uh, the way that black people are treated in much of the South, for example, I don't see anything like that directed at Asians, at least over the large landslide. Like if you go through Mississippi, uh, which I have, and you'll see this pervasive attitude that, oh yeah, we got to keep the from taking over and all, and
This is
you don't see
white country.
yeah, you don't really see that attitude toward Asians, probably because there aren't as many of them, and people aren't as resentful as they if you don't see a lot of an ethnic group now, where it's probably a bigger problem is maybe places like port cities on the west coast,
Yeah. Like
like San Francisco, where
Seattle. Yeah.
Seattle and all that, where you do have large Asian populations. There may be a pervasive problem there.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
won't say because I haven't seen it that it isn't there, and I would find it very believable that it is. But it's not. I mean, Atlanta. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just not really seeing why it would be such a big deal in a place like Atlanta. Um,
Yeah. Atlanta's
because
more of a classic. It's more of a classic white on black racism.
yes, and you do have an Asian uh, immigrant community,
Yeah.
but they're not particularly concentrated there. They are not particularly present in any particular like industry or trade or anything where you would say, well, they're shutting out our people. You
Mm.
know, they're uh, they're just there. I mean, obviously, you have people who are different, and uh, our people have always been a little bit resentful of anyone who doesn't look like us. I mean,
Hmm.
we would be foolish to
Yeah.
deny
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, dude,
But
like I.
I don't see where it has been the kind of big problem that would
Yeah.
justify rioting in the streets. It's just
It.
you
It.
know,
I can't help
I
but
mean, and
feel.
I am the first guy. I'm like, I am the first guy who will say, yeah, if a cop shoots someone, no matter who the fuck they are, and they're caught on video and it's obvious the person wasn't
Unarmed.
doing shit, they were unarmed, they weren't doing anything wrong, and a cop just straight up murders them, and it's clear the cop is going to get this, then yes, riot in the fucking streets. That is completely justified.
Mhm.
That is what is necessary.
Mhm.
But and because like I said, it's like I lean to the political left, and that's one
Hmm.
of the ways that I do. But I'm saying this is just embarrassing. As someone who leans to the political left, watching the reaction to this mass murderer who clearly is part of an established trope being completely misunderstood and then used by not one, but at least two completely unrelated groups to try to make him their poster child. And I'm just like, and they are being vicious about anyone who tries
Don't
to
question.
correct it.
Don't question it,
So
Roger.
yeah, so yes, this is embarrassing. It is embarrassing to say that I am on the political left while this is happening, because this is a complete fuck up.
So I can't help but think of the George Carlin quote where he's like, we keep the left and the right mad at each other. We keep the middle class afraid of the lower class. All the while, the rich run away with all the fucking money. Keep
Ain't that
everyone
the case?
divided.
Yep.
And I can't help but feel like if you look at like Google index terms, you see Black Lives Matter and just in total like uses across all news titles, Facebook's total mentions online, just from searches, queries to titles of podcasts to whatever. They could just you can go find like the use of. It's actually really cool because they've started, as evil as Google is, they started scanning a ton of old books and newspapers, so you can actually go and find when was a term. Like I didn't know this third world that was coined after World War II. I always thought that was like
Hmm.
a millennia old term. No,
Oh
it's
no, yeah,
so
that was the well. It's like Fourth Estate.
yeah.
That
Well,
was that was from World War I and the
wasn't
early 20th century.
I thought that was like French Revolution. The point is we don't. It's like you go back and you get corrected.
Yeah,
So you can go back and look at like indices of like Black Lives Matter, and it it peaks at elections, primarily 2020 and 2016, and then to a lesser extent 2018 and I think 2014. But it seems like, and again, people can get worked into a blind rage, and it's fuck you, Tommy, you're white guy, and it's like, no, let's just hold on, let's just drop all the rage. You can hate me for every other thing, just like let's hit a timeout for a second. Like let's entertain the possibility that this is being used to divide us, and there's a much greater threat, and it's a political and technocratic trillionaire elite that are keeping us at each other's throats. It seems like this is kind of bubbling up out of nowhere. It's just the new hashtag. It's hashtag Me Too, where it's a trending meme.
yeah,
It's Gangnam Style. It's Harlem Shake. It's just now it's Stop Asian Hate, and no one wants to come out and say, is there Asian hate? Because no one wants to be the white supremacist, fascist, whatever the fuck they want to label you as.
yeah.
And how dare you question it? So there's this weird thing where it's like it almost feels like that's the new season of Earth. Hey, welcome to season 2021 of United States. Starting in this episode, it's strong with Stop Asian Hate. And it's did you see the Stop Asian? But that it just feels like it's being delivered out, and it's coming out of nowhere, and no one wants to reject it.
And yeah, and the thing is, I can believe that a particular person of Asian heritage, maybe in school, felt uh, picked on and targeted because they were different. But that again is not quite the same. I was picked on and targeted because I was different,
I
and I'm
I
a white male.
I used to study with two of my friends in college, all pre-med.
Oh,
Those two, damn it, Roger. It's those two are now physicians, but we all used to study in the same courses, and it was me and it was my black friend, literally from Africa, like first generation, was born in like Nigeria, and then my other friend who was born in Seoul, South Korean, and we used to be racist as fuck to each other. We'd be in this little study room, and we would just be saying slurs to each other, and I
yeah,
would
but
get.
that
But what I mean is like that's like so I'm saying like yeah racism does exist, but I'm thinking it's us saying these unconscionable things to each other. But it was and then it was like
yeah, but
but
that's like a married couple that uses like
that's you dumb bitch. Yeah,
Right.
but we used to say
It's
that,
like I've known people who are like that.
you know,
Uh,
yeah, it's like, we'd be studying and I'd be like, "Hey, son up, like, are you tired?" And he'd be like, "No, this is just how my eyes are." You stupid honky. And like, he used to just say shit to, or like my other friend from Africa, he was like, "Man, I feel bad for y'all." He's like, "Y'all got to score so much higher on the MCAT than me." Because he was like, "I get a leg up." I was like, "Fuck you, man." But then the joke would always be, I'll be like, "Whatever, no one's gonna shoot." I'll be like, "I can walk into a police station with a gun and I'm fine." And they're like, "That's true." And so we always had, it's, but yeah, it's. I guess I don't know. Maybe that was just us three having fun, and they're both physicians
well,
now.
yeah, that's not the same as
No, it's
being
not. That was
on
just
the
kind of a
outside.
no. That was
Yeah.
just that was comedic relief, but.
Yeah. Well, and that's all because you were friends.
Mhm.
That's you understood your mutual places and the things that each of you faced or didn't have to face in society, and so you were
Yeah,
kind of having fun with that. That's not the same as being actually on the outside and having
yeah,
kids steal your lunch money or whatever they
yeah.
might do because they thought, well, here's someone I can pick on and no one will do anything about it. And I'm
Mhm,
sure that happens because it happened to me, and I'm a white. It happened to me because I was smart.
mhm.
Just like, yeah, I was picked on a lot when I was in school. Um, but that's not the same as institutionalized hate. That's not,
Yeah.
what happened to me was not the same as what happens to black people.
Yeah, it's not the same as
I,
yeah, cops shooting black people
yeah,
or
I mean, I didn't have to worry about a cop shooting me because he mistook my, baton for a gun or something,
yeah, yeah.
I don't have to worry about, uh, just all kinds of
A
things
a be
that,
it's just a systemic Harvard, you gotta score
yeah.
higher. Fuck you. You gotta score higher if you're Asian.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I had to score higher than other people, and that was just the, you know, but then I
Yeah.
did. So
But
that's
yeah,
okay.
but
Uh,
but circling it back, it kind of feels like it's just like it feels like social engineering, and it's very easy to slip into like a tinfoil hat QAnon shit. But like let's remove all like feared stigmas, and it does kind of feel like it's like putting an additive into like a preservative into a food on a production line. It kind of feels like, and we're gonna throw in hashtag stop Asian hate, and it's we keep this going at each other,
it
and so
does
like
seem like he came out of nowhere.
and then the
And
question is well, what are we being distracted from? What are we being distracted from? COVID relief bill. How much of that is going to NGOs in other countries, which is being kicked back to the very, very piece of shit Republican and Democrat senators that are passing it? Is something going on in the South China Sea? Are we, bucking heads with China off the coast of Alaska? Is something else going on? That's my
yeah,
question. Is what's going on?
HR1,
HR.
voting rights.
There you go. So it seems like there is a don't look over here. Don't look over here. Someone pointed out to me, and it wasn't until months afterwards, that the video I took on January 6th was there was a scaffolding that was lowered. It was on the ground at the front of the Capitol, and one, there was no police, there's no anything there, and people got on that, and it was operable. Which again, most shit like that has some sort of key.
Yeah.
I know because I used to try to get into construction equipment in downtown. I'd be pissed drunk, and we'd be on the way home, and we'd see an apartment. On more than one occasion, I got into a Bobcat or something and tried to operate it. They take the keys out. All right, trust me, I know. And I'd probably be dead if they didn't. I tried to get into an 18 wheeler in like 2010, and this guy was just parked at a gas station. I was like, I'm going to go hop up into that. The point is so but it's so they take the key out. They take the key out in Bumblefuck, Georgia, around a bunch of drunk kids. To me, it was odd that there was a scaffold. None of this is important. There's a scaffolding down. People got on it. It was operable. It went up. You can see in my recording, as I'm recording the scaffolding going up, is the exact time someone starts, some fucking guy, just big beard, no mask on, starts shattering a window with a crowbar. That is a real life
Yeah.
example that I've seen with my own eyes of don't look over here. Something's happening over here. Joke's on him. I got a video of him. But to me, it's like, what's going on? If everyone is,
Hmm.
it's like, I think it was when Trump sold Like Him or Hate Him. I remember when Trump made a big arms deal with Saudi Arabia, and all the conservatives, myself included, just kind of looked the other way. Wait, what do you mean? We're giving guns, we're giving tanks and bombs to Saudi Arabia? Didn't they sponsor 9/11? Oh, but it's Trump, so I'm just going to pretend it didn't happen. But the same day he did that was the day he climbed the steps of Air Force One with toilet paper on his shoe. And I can't help but think,
Yeah.
don't look over here. What's over here? So, and don't misconstrue what I'm saying as like, oh, the guy that shot all those people in Atlanta was an MK Ultra guy, and there was no. But what I'm saying is just in general, it seems like, I got your nose. It feels like that,
Yeah.
doesn't it? Or am I just
You're
retarded?
right. It does feel like it came out of nowhere. The whole
Stop Asian hate.
what is it, Asian Lives Matter thing?
Is that a
It's
thing
yeah.
now? Okay, I didn't
Where
know.
did
So,
that come from?
yeah,
Um, and it's not that prejudice doesn't exist or it's not a real problem or anything,
sure.
but it's like this focus on it came out of nowhere. And you're right. It does make me wonder if there is something that we're being distracted from by
Mm-hmm.
it. Uh, Especially when you look at the people who are being distracted. They're
Yes.
the left is losing its collective shit over this.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the people who would be looking over the shoulders of the people who are trying to
Mm-hmm.
fuck things up, you know, maybe a little bit at this point. Um, I'm just, uh, we're not at the point yet where I can say no. I think that this is what they were distracting us from. I think you're right that there may be a there that there's something uh, we're not supposed to be noticing. The problem is we're not noticing it still because we are noticing the distraction. Uh, but you got a very good point there.
Well, it's it's and you never do notice it, right? It's 9/11 happens, and then the USA Patriot Act comes through, and it's just boom, boom, boom. It happens so quick, kind of like a pickpocket. You can never know until again. I didn't realize until like a month and a half later, someone was like, "Hey, man, I was watching your video. Did you notice that the exact time the scaffolding, like, I remember when I was there, I thought the scaffolding was weird, but I never once thought." And I was like, "Oh, you're right. Scaffolding goes up, window starts being broken." Like it just happened at the same time, and it.
There might actually be some people in the government who would find that video very interesting because now they're going after those guys with some success as far as figuring out who they were, and that very thing.
Mhm,
Uh, you may be the only one who caught that in that
mhm.
way. Because I got a suspicion that the guy who's breaking the window has already been identified and maybe arrested.
There's no way he
But
hasn't because
the surround
he didn't even have a mask on.
Yeah,
Like,
and they've been being very thorough and methodical about anyone who got into the building.
mhm. As
Um,
well as they fucking
but
should. I said it when I was there, and I'll say it now. I can't scoff at BLM and Antifa for breaking shit and burning down a courthouse in Portland, and then turn a blind eye when it just so happens to be people that maybe I'm aligned with politically start shattering windows. To me, it's no
yeah,
different whether you're dressed in black, whether you're wearing a shirt that says "I can't breathe," or whether you've got a Trump 2020 shirt on. The second you start destroying things, it's like, dog, now we're just going back to Barbary. And that's why I
yeah,
left at that time. But it does feel like we're being distracted, and like the video with the scaffolding and the crowbar, we probably won't know until we look back at it.
yeah. Well, that's kind of the way it always ends up working.
Yeah.
That
And by the
it's
time you realize it, there's a new one coming in. So, Roger, let's test our theory. We got to wrap this one up in like 10 minutes, but let's test our theory. Sunday, March 21st, 2020, 3:30 p.m. on the nose Eastern time. What is going to be something that happens later this year for anyone listening from the future? What is there another hashtag or something that comes out of nowhere? And I don't mean something like COVID, where it's like, yeah, in November 2020, COVID wasn't trending, and it's because there was a fucking pandemic. I mean,
yeah,
let's test our theory. is
Well,
there
part
something that's gonna pop up later this summer about, like, liberate Madagascar, free the Siberians, you know, stop hatred against those who ride tricycles?
part of what may be a problem for some people is that the pandemic is going to wind down. I've already got my first shot of Moderna. My second is scheduled in about 2 weeks. Uh, I know quite a few others who have. I mean, this is one thing where say what you want about Joe Biden, but he said we're going to do 100 million shots in 100 days, and they're ahead of
Hey, man,
schedule.
I have no problem giving credit where credit's
Um,
I said
but
yesterday.
that means we need a new outrage because the
Yeah.
pandemic is going to go away.
Yeah, it's like what Tim Dillon said. He was like, a lot of you, he's like, you don't realize it, but you love the pandemic because you can be angry about masks and you can romanticize about how things used to be. And he goes, now the pandemic's going to end and we're going to realize just how shitty normal life always was. We're going to go, he goes, a lot of us are going to get to the end of our driveway and go, fuck this, and go right back inside.
Hey, no, I'm looking forward to. It's like my dad and I have met a few times over the course of it, but it's like I will actually be able to hug my dad again
Fuck yeah.
because we've both been immunized. Uh, but on the other hand, there's as this thing winds down, it's going to cease to be the outrage of the day for the first time in a year, and uh, yeah, there will probably be something else. Um,
what's the new
and
hate?
there's no telling because who could have seen? Uh, I mean, who would have seen Stop Asian Hate coming? It's like uh, there hasn't been any particular outrage toward Asians except the Atlanta shooting that I know of
Hmm.
in the last decade or so.
Yeah.
So it's like this sort of came out of nowhere, like this pent up thing. Well, which
It seems
again doesn't
astroturfed.
make any. It seems manufactured.
Yeah, it's like you can go. So I did this about a year ago. And it was me and my buddy Duran, who was actually episode number one. But he came on, and we were talking about how I basically said something along the lines of what I'm saying with you now about Stop Asian Hate. Is I was like, Duran, if you had gone back to our December 2019 episode and talked about COVID, we wouldn't know what we were talking about. And he was like, correct. And I was like, so what's the next thing that we don't see coming? That afternoon, George Floyd was killed after the episode.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
so I say that to say that's not a valid example because that was something that happened and it was like that, okay, there's video, okay, that's
yeah.
okay, sure. The riots, so that's not unrelated, that was just more so unpredicted.
But
The
but
Stop
it's
Asian
like
Hate, it seems manufactured.
yeah, it feels manufactured, and you don't know where the next thing is going to be. But it's like you're pointing out that your brother asked you to invest in Bitcoin, and if you had done what he asked you, you would be a billionaire
I
now.
wouldn't be doing this fucking podcast. I probably would actually. I'd probably be doing the exact same thing.
You would be doing it on an actual network with television cameras and you know all the accoutrements, and you'd have two
Yeah.
million viewers. Uh, but yeah, you can't see it in advance, and this is one of the things that I learned viscerally hanging around the casino for all that time is that uh you can arrange the advantage play uh situation where you know that in the long run if you keep doing the same thing you'll come out ahead, but you never know on any particular bet.
Mm-hmm.
And you can be a winner, and we proved uh that you can that edge, you can lose 49% of the bets you make and still be a massive winner in the long
Mm-hmm.
term. But you have to know what the odds are.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be able to see the math to see it coming if it's a black swan, and none of us are in that privileged position. I didn't see the uh,
Stop Asian
Asian
Hate.
Stop Asian Hate thing coming, and I find it maddening because there is an actual thing. This is why I wanted to talk about it, uh, and that the actual thing is being ignored in order to create this hype.
Mm.
Uh, And there is an actual thing. There is an actual thing there that keeps happening, that repeats, that you could maybe do something about if you actually paid attention to it and cared. But no one cares about it. No, no, everyone is trying to use this uh, for their own hobby horse.
I think
And I
did
don't know why.
I think I just Sherlock Holmes'd it. I think hashtag Stop Asian Hate came from an NRA think tank, because what they don't want people going is, this guy got a gun and killed a bunch of people. No, we got to change it to
Oh, yeah.
misogyny, and I guess Asiatic hatred.
Yeah, because you don't get any more pure than that. He went out,
Diverge,
bought a
diverge.
gun,
Just
you know,
dun 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 dun.
thought about it overnight, and still used the gun that he bought for the purpose he bought it for, which is to kill a bunch of random strangers. Or maybe not so random. It's like we don't know. Apparently, he may have been, uh, a patron
We're gonna
of
find
these
out that all those people.
establishments.
We're gonna find out that all those people are like related to Epstein or something.
Or well, more likely that he's been going to those establishments for months, and that that's been what's grinding his gears. And uh,
It almost seems like maybe there was a glitch, right? It seems like the Stop Asian Hate hashtag should have come after the shooting. You know, I can't breathe. That's post George Floyd.
hmm.
It seems like
And that's weird too.
they
It's
fucked
like
up the
where
delivery. They fucked up
if
the
it what
delivery.
you're right. I mean that looks very suspicious actually, because uh, yeah, it's because I'm not aware of anything else that would have made this the trending thing that it is, and yet it was there like this bubble out of nowhere when the shooting occurred. So it's like, did somebody know?
It'd be like if we
Or
talked about the people with crowbars and the scaffolding. It'd be like if we did an episode on January 5th about that.
yeah.
People would be like, "Hold on."
But the thing is, it's like talking about being like the NRA, though. It's like if you were setting it up, if you were staging it, the last thing you would do would be having him
With a
buy
gun.
the gun legally the day before and then use the legally bought gun to commit a major crime, because that is
Now
exactly all of the things the gun control people want to stop from happening.
if Stop Asian Hate started trending after the shooting, then I would say NRA think tank. Got to diverge.
Yeah,
Got to deflect.
right. Yeah, but like
But
you
it
said, it
happened
started
before.
with,
Are they getting
and I'm
sloppy? Are they getting sloppy? There's the Illuminati getting sloppy, Roger.
well, there you get into, okay, does that mean that but again, if it was a setup though, then the question is, why would the NRA have set it up to look so
Well,
much like a premeditated gun trial? I mean, it's like the very
it doesn't
thing.
make sense. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Unless it's the anti-gun lobby, right? Have you ever seen that?
Oh, now we're getting into the jujitsu of my blocking and feigning, and it's like we're all
Yeah.
pretending to.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah. But more than anything is, it doesn't matter whether it's the CIA or the NRA or whatever. It's odd that it would seem to come out of nowhere, and then there was a shooting, right? It's like when the audio doesn't match up on a video,
mhm.
and like it's like if the video is delayed, it'd be like if you told a joke and I started laughing and you heard the laughing before you saw my face. It seems odd. It seems like they got sloppy. They pushed the hashtag before they had the asset go shooting, right? It seems weird. Which makes me think sometime later this year, I don't know what it is. I don't claim to know what it is, but let's imagine that there's going to be another seemingly astroturfed hashtag coming out. And I'm just curious as to what that is. We can't possibly know, right? We can't possibly
Yeah.
know what it will be, but it's going to be something. I don't know what it is, but it's going to be something out of left field. It's going to be like
Yes.
stop stop the sexualization of Eskimos, right? It's going to be like, hey, these these igloo penguin hunting people are not pieces of
Yeah.
ass. for white men
Hollow
to fuck.
laughter and marble halls.
Yeah, it's gonna be
The,
something, right? It's gonna be what's a sleeper? I always bring up Madagascar, but there's gonna be something that no one's thought of,
what is it with
right?
you in Madagascar?
It's because it just seems so odd.
You realize my wife has actually been to Madagascar, the real actual Madagascar, the island and off of Africa. That she's actually took a bird tour there.
Really. Well, then it can't be
Yeah.
Madagascar because that seems to be relevant. It's gonna be like Liechtenstein. It's gonna be something,
With the
and
mouse that roared.
yeah, yeah. But something's gonna happen later this year, and everyone's gonna get riled up about it. And but there's gonna be no precedent. So what I'm trying to do is say that before it happens, so we can come back to this and be like, we knew it. Something's gonna happen. I don't know what it is, but something's gonna is
Well, the thing
gonna
about
be a
Madagascar is that China is deforesting the place and using it as a launch pad to get into southern Africa.
is Stop Asian Hate a China psyop?
Mm,
Preemptively get
I
us to
don't
start
really see
to get
them.
it's to get us to preemptively not want to criticize Asian because, let's say China takes over Madagascar and someone goes, "Hey, why are they doing that?" And everyone goes, "See, Asian hate. It's Asian hate." Who knows? Is it a
I
preemptive
don't.
thing?
Well, I don't. Well, you've got a weird thing going on there because you've got China taking over Madagascar, which is
The Belt and
itself
Road Initiative.
a weird place, and they are using Madagascar as a launching pad into southern Africa. Uh, while meanwhile, Saharan Africa is being more courted by the Middle East countries.
Mm-hmm.
China is sort of bypassing them, and Madagascar is sort of a critical uh, jumping point there.
United States is we're shutting down a lot of our bases in Europe and actually relocating soldiers to Africa.
Yeah, well, I think people are realizing that that's where a lot of the resources are for things like rare
Yeah,
earths.
it's like the party moving from one house to like, hey, we're all going to that house now. Everyone's like, hey,
Yeah,
we've raped and pillaged the Middle East. We've done it for 20 years. After parties in Africa, and it's just all the parties are like, come along
yeah,
and
they got all
ride.
the lithium.
Yeah, yeah. Who knows? Or is it some double psyop? Is it going to be Stop Asian Hate for? I don't fucking know. Now we're just getting off into the weeds. But
Well,
Roger,
I mean, the thing is, yes, domestically, I think there's a big distinction between Asians domestically versus the way that Asians as foreign peoples are perceived,
yeah.
both by our leaders and by other citizens.
Mhm.
So, the threat is as it's perceived by people who are different than you, by people who are black or who are Asian or who are whatever domestically, or Mexican, of course, that being the big one for the last 20 years or so, is not that's not the same as the threat of a foreign major power that just happens to be made up of people who look like that, because hell, they're a real country.
Yeah.
We
I
have to
mean,
take them seriously. They have nuclear weapons too.
yeah. It's
uh,
whatever it is, it feels like we're only seeing the top of the iceberg. Whether it's manufactured
yes.
outrage by bankers so that we don't think about how they're fucking us, whether it's manufactured outrage by, China so that they can preemptively sow it into the subconscious that they're not the bad, whatever it is, it seems to be
Hmm.
astroturfed.
Well, and everything has been on hold for a year because of the pandemic.
Mm.
And don't forget that too, that there is a big thing about China and the pandemic allegedly starting
COVID
there, and certain
19,
people
gain of function
blaming them for
genetics.
it. So that, yeah, there's a lot going on there, uh, and
Is it
the
damage
problem
control?
is,
Is it damage control for COVID? Is China going, fuck, they're going to find out it came from a Wuhan lab? Let's get out ahead of this.
I don't shit, man. These guys are like
I mean,
12 levels above us.
let's there's been a piece, Yeah, I think I said this. Actually, no, I said it to my buddy Ben. I was like, there was a certain piece when Biden got into office and we started bombing Syria because I realized the military industrial complex sometimes it puts on a mask that says Obama, sometimes it puts on some socks that say Trump, sometimes it wears a new jacket that says Biden, but the machine trundles on and it destroys, rapes, and maims everyone. And there's a certain peace in knowing that demons run the world. And I've since gone from I can do something about it to now I'm just kind of enjoying I'm watching it as a game,
Yeah.
and I'm realizing that there are nuclear bunkers and trillions of dollars and CIA assets and satellites and black programs and double agents and triple agents. And listen, man, if I try to get too involved into it, I'm going to get a bullet in the back of the head. So instead, I'm just kind of appreciating watching it as a show. And I'm just like,
Watch the movie, have a drink.
watch the movie and just enjoy it, you
No,
know?
and I have and I've had, I've been watching, because I'm of that age where I watch all of my friends having their kids are now of age and having grandkids, and
Mhm.
they're all like, "Oh, I get so much pleasure out of my family," and it's like I'm just like, you know what? I completely forgot to reproduce, and I'm not regretting it one bit
Well, that's the thing
because
is, I think if I was having kids, I don't think I'd be able to detach from it. I think I'd be terrified.
yeah,
I'd be going,
yeah,
"Fuck, there's shootings, you know, am I gonna raise my kid in Atlanta where there's a cop out almost
yeah,
that I get to just
yeah.
kind of watch."
Yeah, and the thing is, I'm not particularly worried about my species. I'm not particularly worried about the human race
We'll
because
get on. We'll
we
keep
make
going.
we make rats look like weaklings. I mean,
Yeah.
we will continue,
Yeah.
but any particular one of us that may end up being a different story depending on what happens with the
Sure.
climate
Oh,
and the
sure.
wars
It
and
might not be America, it might be China, it might be Russia, it might be Madagascar, but humans as a whole, oh, we're gonna keep
yeah.
trucking. We're fine.
Um but yeah, as far as like my particular
Is it
kids
is it
though,
this
if I was
one? I don't know. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm like I'm very cool with the fact of having abdicated my supposed responsibility to reproduce because actually plenty of other people have done that for me. I don't think there is anything so special about my DNA that I need to make sure that the next generation has a sample of it. Uh, and
In a way they do. You and I are immortalizing ourselves with podcasts, and in a way we are passing along ourselves.
just not as DNA,
Yeah.
as more as NTSC video or whatever this passes for
But
nowadays.
but we've talked enough that I mean, you could probably there's been enough hours of us talking. There's a large enough sample that you could probably accurately or relatively
Yes, reconstruct our
reconstruct
personalities and
us and see what
manipulation.
we're gonna say. Yeah, I mean, they're right. There's only so much. You could probably deep fake me saying anything. You probably wouldn't need to. You
Hmm.
could probably actually find the video of me saying like I'm gonna fuck a chihuahua. Like it's probably there. Like you don't need to deep fake it. Roger, I gotta wrap this one up because my computer is turning into a dinosaur, and I got another episode in 10 minutes, and I gotta
Okay.
hope my
Yeah, you don't
computer
want it
doesn't.
to melt.
It will. I just don't want it to melt entirely. But Roger
I
Williams, author of Metamorphosis of Prime Intellect, buy it on Lulu, you fucks, and
see you next week.
see you next week. And stop Madagascar hate. It's got to stop, and it's got to stop now. All right, Roger. Take care, buddy.